Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things Youth Justice. How are you doing today?
Good. Hello.
Good. We're joined today in our studio by Toni. You all know us. We'll just reintroduce ourselves because we know that we've been away for a while. So I'm Chakoti. I head up the Youth Justice team at Leicestershire Cares, and
I'm Jenny. I work alongside Chakoti as a youth worker on the Youth Justice
Thank
team.
you. That's great. We're going to just hand over to you, Toni. If you could just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, so my name's Toni and I'm one of the community navigators on the Phoenix programme that's based here in Leicester. It's a multi-agency team, so we work with police, probation, youth justice and people like myself that are community navigators with lived experience.
Sounds good. Toni, so we started a conversation sometime last week and I was so intrigued by it. And we'll come up to that conversation later on in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
But I wanted you to just share with our audience like how you first got into crime coming up.
Okay, so my kind of background story is that I didn't, I don't know whether people envisage that they'll get involved in the life of crime. I kind of fell into the life of crime because I was an angry young man.
Okay.
It provided an outlet for me to express how I was feeling. I didn't understand I was carrying a lot of pain and a lot of anger throughout my childhood and going into my adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
And it created a situation where violence became a way of life. And that kind of then dictated the path that my life took, because then criminality became a part of my life because you could make money by being a very violent person. So yeah, kind of fell into that lifestyle as opposed to, it was somewhat a choice, but I was still relatively young.
How old do you remember?
14 or 15.
Wow, quite young.
That's really
Yeah,
young, yeah.
And you said you were angry. Looking back now, because what the data shows is that a lot of young people in the criminal justice system have experienced adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
And I do know from working with other young people is that a lot of young people don't actually know how to express themselves.
Absolutely.
They don't know much about emotional management,
Yes.
and that often leads to them acting out in ways that they later feel sorry for.
Of course, yeah.
So would you say that you did experience adverse childhood experiences that led to you being angry? So you weren't just born angry. There were things that happened.
The things that happen, yeah, absolutely. So I can definitely relate to a lot of the people that I work with.
Yeah.
Growing up, I witnessed a lot of domestic violence within the household. My dad was born in India, my mum was born here.
Okay.
Cultural differences. Dad had a way of thinking, mum had a way of thinking. And that had a significant impact on my upbringing because there was a lot of police involvement, family getting involved.
Got you.
Mum wouldn't really share too much with the family because of the issues around everything that was going on in the household. I lived as a single child until the age of 11, so there's a 10-year difference between me and my sister for that reason, because there was so much domestic violence in the household. I can't imagine why my mum wanted to have a child with my dad, but it was kind of, they were from a different way of life in terms of, we've got to make this work, it's family respect. But due to that, I became a very, very angry person. I became detached from my dad. I didn't particularly like my dad because of everything that he was doing.
Yeah.
And in the process, sadly, I kind of lost my mum as well because she became quite depressed and quite withdrawn. So from seeing somebody that was very loving to somebody that was very just down and upset and just withdrawn, a bit of a shadow and a shell of herself. And that was quite sad to see, but I didn't know how to emotionally regulate or didn't quite understand that as a kid. So all the pain and hurt that I was carrying, I then went out and projected that into the world. Unknowingly, subconsciously, there was something that was driving me to act out in the way that I was acting out in.
There's a saying, hurt people, hurt
people.
others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your dad probably did the things that he did because of his own experiences that you probably don't have access to.
So that's the interesting dynamic there, because my dad never had a dad. My dad's dad passed away when my dad was 6 months old. So I've thought about this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
If it was a learnt behaviour, where did he learn this behaviour? But I think the kind of conclusion I've come to, and it's taken a long time, my dad was a very insecure person, didn't have a lot of confidence. And I think if you're insecure and you lack confidence, you can't give that to somebody else. And I guess he didn't know how to regulate his emotions. He had no emotional regulation and about how you're supposed to behave. And because he came from a mindset and a country where there was this power dynamic between male and females, there were very distinct roles within the household. The wife just did what the husband told them, but my mum was born in England. She came from a very different way of life.
Yeah.
So the cultures clashed, and that doesn't make it right for the way that my dad behaved. But my mum was someone that spoke up for herself, and if she didn't agree with something, she would say that. But there was always repercussions to that.
Gotcha.
And I never, in all the time that I've seen that, I never seen my dad apologise to my mum. He never accepted the things that he did. He doesn't accept them now. He still lives in a state of denial.
Wow.
Because I've tried to, as an adult, have a conversation with him and say, like, a lot of things that I seen impacted me growing up, but then he'll turn around and say, oh, you never see me drink alcohol, but you drink alcohol. You never see me smoke. He kind of finds a way to divert
deflect
it and
it,
go, well, oh, so what you're saying is your parents are bad. I said, no, I'm saying what you showed me was bad, and I'd like you to take some acceptance for that, because ultimately for me, I would like to have a more loving relationship with my dad, but I struggle. Even now, I still struggle with that. And I think my ego kind of gets involved as well, because I look at my dad and think he's getting older. I'd like to have a better relationship with him. But he doesn't realise the burden that it's made me carry throughout my lifetime as well.
Yeah.
I think we'll come to you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I think there's something in there that our young people also struggle with, and that's the theme of forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Yes.
And forgiveness is not something, it's not a gift that you give somebody else, it's a gift that you give to yourself.
Yeah.
And I say this to people, including my siblings, as like, it's better to make peace with parents than to speak to a box.
That is true.
Because once they're gone,
They're gone.
they're gone.
Yeah.
And
that's powerful.
yes,
Yeah.
and some parents will never get to the stage where they can say, I'm sorry for I did this. I know it made you feel this way.
Yeah.
But you also have to understand that, particularly when they're older than you're much older, they're closer to the grave than you are if things go in the natural order. And so I hope that in time that you can find it in you to just let it go. What is done is done. He's probably never going to apologize. But what you have of him, enjoy now.
No, it's true, and I think that's particularly difficult when you go to funerals.
Yes.
You go to someone else's, my uncle or my auntie, and I look and I think, like, at some point I'm going to have to go through this. Maybe because I don't know, I might die before my parents. Like,
you don't know.
You don't know that.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking and I'm thinking, and that would be my last kind of moment with my dad. So
Exactly.
and it is really burdensome, and I go
Exactly.
to meditation because I tried to find peace and solace inside myself. And I needed that because there was a lot of unrest inside me, which I was projecting onto the world. And I try so hard, but I don't know what the sticking point is there. And I just find it really, really difficult. I know I need to do it because I've had to do it with other people that have had certain things through the world of criminality, where I've had to just bury it and just say, look, you did what you did. It wasn't right, but let's draw a line under it.
Yeah.
But I just can't seem to find the capacity just yet.
Yeah.
I hope something will change.
Eventually, I hope it will change, because forgiveness, it will never be a feeling. You'll never feel like forgiving someone, particularly if it hurt you really badly.
Yeah.
But it is a decision, and it is a gift that you give yourself to liberate yourself.
Of course.
You know?
100%.
And it's something that when you make that decision, when you get to the place where you can make that decision, tomorrow something will come up in your heart to remind you of, like, he did this, he did that. But then you choose again and say, no, I've forgiven him. And it's a daily decision.
Every day.
And then over time, when you start to move your focus from he did this, but this is what he's doing, these are the positive things he's doing right now.
Yeah.
You get to enjoy the person that he is right now, because although he didn't have a father, that in itself is traumatic.
Yeah.
So he was probably, he didn't have someone to guide him, and you didn't necessarily know what other experiences he may have experienced, because he didn't have a father there to protect him. So not everybody has to copy step by step exactly what's happened to them, but there's always a reason as to where the hurt is coming from, which if they're not conscious, they then go on to pass on to somebody else.
And I've just to touch on that as well in terms of, like, parents. I think sometimes people fail to see their parents. Yes, they like your mom and dad, but they're also individuals. They're still a woman, they're still a man, they still make mistakes. And obviously when you get older, obviously when you have parents, like, it's their role to look after you, but then at the same time you just have to be like, okay, but they're a man, they're a woman, they've got their own issues as well, they go through these things as well in life. So but it's a big thing already to even acknowledge that. Is you like saying that, it's a big thing to even recognize that, to be like, you know what, it's not it's not easy. It's not an easy thing for me to just go up there
Just to
and
go up there.
to go up there, and that's a acknowledgement. That's being your self-awareness as well. It's very important. And I just wanted to go back on when you mentioned about obviously your facing, like, seeing domestic violence around your house. Did you have like much support in school, or did you have anyone that you could speak to? Because I know
No, not really, because I don't think it was something that I don't recall speaking about it at school with anyone. It just transpired that it played out in my behaviours.
Okay.
I was probably a lot more naughty than the rest of the kids. I was disinterested, but I think when I reflect back on it, it was probably because I was worried about what was going on at home. But I couldn't express that as a young child. So the way that I expressed it was rebelling at school. Not doing what I needed to be. No, I don't need to do that. Messing about, getting thrown out, and then getting parents called into school. But I think if I look back, I think it played probably heavily on my mum's mind, and I didn't recognise that. She was thinking, he's playing up because of everything he's seeing at home. But then she was kind of stuck in this dynamic that she couldn't remove herself from. She had some opportunities. My uncles went and spoke to her, and I remember this when I was about 5 or 6 years old. Them sitting my mum down and saying, leave him, he's not going to change. You need to get yourself out of this and save your son. And I remember that conversation happening.
Wow.
And that kind of echoes in your head as you get a bit older.
How did you process it as an adult?
As an adult, it was deep. It was just like, you know what? Could my life been different? Or it could have, maybe if I didn't have my father figure around, could I felt abandoned and got even more aggressive? So there's so much to try and weigh up. And it kind of, like, you can go down that rabbit hole and you can drive yourself crazy.
Literally,
I spent most of my life trying to work out my dad, and I've got to the point now I was like, I don't need to work him out. I just need to work myself out.
That's exactly right.
Love it.
And we don't know what could have been, but we just know what is.
What is.
This
is the reality.
Yeah. Because she may have left him and you could have become again a lot worse.
Yeah.
Because although he was there and he was doing the wrong things, abusing her, but he was still that father figure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was able to check you when you got out of hand. We also have in society, there are a lot of families that are fatherless.
Yes. Yeah. And I've seen the impact of that as well.
It's contributing vastly to a lot of criminality in young people because they don't have any role model, male, negative or positive. There's just none.
Yeah.
And it does have an influence.
No, absolutely. And I think that's been the beauty of being part of this program as well, because there's a lot of conversations I have with the younger generation, particularly the younger generation. There's some adults that will talk about their past experiences, but it's reliving that trauma as well. And it's like talking to my younger self. And it's been a really weird concept because I'd never done anything like this before. I was always keen to do something like this, didn't know how I was going to do something like this, but now I'm doing it. And there are times I go home and think, it's a lot,
yeah.
I'm pretty knackered.
I hope that it does contribute to your healing though, because as you try to help other people. It helps to, I would hope that it helps to heal the 18-year-old or the 15 or 16-year-old in yourself.
It does.
By helping, knowing that you're adding something beneficial to a younger person. It
to
helps
impart that experience to them. And that relatability is priceless. Being able to talk to them when they're talking about certain things, and I hear, I hate my dad because my dad did this to my mum, and I'll listen and then I'll share my story and go, well, I've actually sat there and I said, I actually feel this is so weird. I feel like I'm talking to my younger self, and I said that was why I came into the role as well.
And I hope you find as well that there's something about perception. Life doesn't always deal us like the best of cards. But it's when you then have those cards, what can you make out of it?
Of course.
And you will find, hopefully, as you go through your life, as you go through this role, that there's beauty even in pain.
Of course.
As you go through that, because you're taking wisdom out of it, you're taking strength, you're taking knowledge out of it. You know better than you did when you were younger, and you can help a future generation do better. Yeah,
and experience is the mother of wisdom, isn't it? From going through those things. I like to think that, don't get me wrong, I've met people that are significantly older than me that, you know, that's their life path, and you think, have you not really taken anything from life? Because I think there was a really important quote that Muhammad Ali said. He said that if you still at 60 years old, if you still think like you're 20, you've wasted 40 years of your life. And I was like, that's so true. If you've not grown and you've not learned through these experiences, then what have you been doing?
Exactly.
Have you just been walking blindly through life?
So going through all of that, then how did it impact your ability to travel, to do some of the things that you did? So first of all, you got into a life of crime. What was the end result of that? Where did that lead you?
Led me to a lot of negative experiences. Went to prison, ended up in hospital a couple of times. It was just a continual door of police station, court, prison. So it was just like a bit of a revolving door. And I think the sad thing is to look back, like at a certain age, I just accepted that maybe two options in my life were going to be either I was going to get killed or I was going to get sent to prison for the rest of my life. And at that age, because I still didn't see the world from a different perspective, I was like, that's all right. That's just how my life, this is how it works. And it makes me sad when I reflect back on that and think I thought they were the only two choices. Like life is so valuable. Every day that we get to spend on this planet is such a beautiful thing. And even if you've had a bad, it's like I talked to some of my participants, they say I've had a really bad day. I said, what happened? And they talk about a 15-minute segment of their day. And I said, it's not really that you've had a bad day, you've had a bad moment in a day.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, yeah, you're right. And I said, it's just about trying to refocus and your perception. And if you are having a particularly bad day, you're allowed to as well, because you're a human being.
Exactly.
You know, I use the analogy of an ECG machine at the hospital. Now, that's very much like life. It goes up and down, up and down. The time when it's game over, that line's going in a straight line. So, you know, life will have its ups and downs, but try to just remain focused at where you're at and just look for the lessons, because everything is a lesson and a blessing.
Right, yeah.
I love that. So when was it when you realised you was like, okay, now it's enough. I've been in and out. When was it like your wake up call to be like, oh my God?
Do you know what? I don't think there was one particular moment. And I've tried to reflect on this. I think it was just a catalogue of things where I just thought, there's got to be more to life than this. This can't just be my reality. What am I doing with my life? I need to make something of my life. I need to be proud of myself. And then I really held deeply in my heart because of like kind of cultural differences and you know, parents are really big on, oh, what's your child doing? What's your I felt like actually I need to give them something to be proud of, because if I make them proud, I'm making myself proud. So I decided to go back as a mature student and did a degree in creative media production, which was an interesting experience because I was around people that were there because their parents wanted them to be there, doing the same things I was doing at school or college, getting frustrated, but then kind of smiling and looking at the universe and going, I get it. You're teaching me a lesson here. Instead of like being reactive to it and going, can you just do your Snapchat outside? Look, they're kids, just let them carry on. I'm here because I want to learn. They're here because mum and dad said you have to go to university. There's a big difference. And it was a really proud moment to get my degree. And when I looked over at my parents and their faces were like lit up, and I was like, do you know what? It's been a slog this 3 years, but it's been worthwhile.
Something that stood out for me as you were speaking, you talked about revolving doors. Does prison work?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't think so, because ultimately, if you're looking to rehabilitate people, you don't rehabilitate people by sticking them behind the door for 23 hours and 45 minutes with their own thoughts, with a random person that you're going to share a room with. You're going to have to go toilet in that same room. You're going to eat and sleep in that room. I don't see how that rehabilitates people. I think prison, there's a fine line between becoming better and bitter. And I think if you're already angry against the system, you think the whole world's against you. By locking you away, detaching you away from the things that matter to you, I just don't see how that helps.
I completely agree. I don't think prison works.
No.
I think it should be there for like certain things, but I think there should be a heavier focus on rehabilitation.
100%, yeah.
Because in prisons we have human resources absolutely being wasted.
Of course.
Taking up space, be sustained by government funds. So those are human resources. Those are people that can be better. Those are people who need to be taught.
Yeah.
Yes, some people need to be punished.
Of course. But alongside that punishment, there should be some level of life skills.
Exactly,
so that when they come back out into society, you know, they've got something to give back. And you know, the people that end up in prison are broken people.
Of course.
By breaking it further, doesn't work.
Doesn't help.
And if you give them a key skill, you give them a level of responsibility, you give them an education, which is very possible. I think it's significantly cheaper to rehabilitate people than to incarcerate people.
I agree.
I
agree. I completely agree. So what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? So within your role, you're working with younger people. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I think what I try try and impart from my own experiences is don't live just for the day. Try and see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's all good and well what you're doing now, but it will have a significant impact on your future. Now, you know, when you speak to them and say, do you want to go traveling? Yeah, I'm going to travel the world. Oh, okay, where do you want to go? And they'll be like, oh, I want to go to Australia. So they're very strict on getting a visa to go to Australia, you know. Oh, really? Because they've never thought about it. Some of them have never been on holiday before.
No.
The last holiday they might have gone was like a camping holiday with their family when they were 5, and they're 18 years old now. And you kind of take a lot of these things for granted. And I try and give them a scenario. Say, listen, say in 5 years' time, you meet your ideal partner. Everything's amazing. She gets a work opportunity to go to Canada. And I like to use Canada as an example, because I can't travel to Canada.
Okay.
I got refused a visa because of my criminal history, which is quite frustrating because I think like a lot has changed for me since then. But they're very much, they just look at everything that's in black and white. They don't look at the growth. So ultimately, I'd like to maybe one day go to the embassy and have a conversation and say, okay, I was doing a lot of bad things before, but I'm like to think I'm doing a lot of positive things now. So I used Canada as an example for them and say, so would you want to give up your whole relationship because of something you did when you were 18, 19? And they were like, obviously not. And I said, but it happens to a lot of people. You've got to be mindful that it's all good and well going to court when you're 17 and getting your YORs and the, you know, the youth rehabilitation orders and stuff. But once you hit 18, the game changes. The gloves come off. You're not a kid in the eyes of the law anymore. And they will treat you significantly different. And it will have a massive impact. So what would I say to an 18-year-old me? Yeah, it's just have a bit of faith.
Yeah.
Think about your associations, because there's so many people that are like clogging up the system in prisons because of something they did whilst they were around their friends or the people that they deem to be their friends. And there's so many people that get done for joint enterprise. Might be 5 or 6 of you. Only one person pulls out the knife. He kills the person. You all get 25, 30 years in prison.
Wow.
And it's a long time to reflect.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like being held at the police station for 16 hours. And one thing that I'd say to them as well, so if you met someone that was, I don't know, 48 years old or 50, what would you say? Because they're bare old, man. So bare old. So what about if you spent the next 20 years of your life or 30 years of your life, you came out, you're going to be bare old. And you can hear the cogs ticking in their head, and because they're not these kind of conversations that they will have with probation and youth justice, because don't get me wrong, I understand the importance of probation and youth justice, but they don't come from a position of lived experience. It's very contextual. Learn something and this is the way something needs to be. But when you're talking from real life experiences, I think it really does have a massive impact. So 18-year-old self, mind who you're keeping associations with, because show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And then say, oh yeah, but my mate's in prison. Okay, that's my point. If you continue to spend time around people like this, that's where you're going. You don't like being told what to do. In prison, you'll be told what to do.
Exactly.
You'll be told when you can go and have your showers. You don't like routine. You'll be up in the morning. You'll have to go to education. You'll have to do things that you don't want to do. You don't even like being told by your mum to clean your room. How are you going to deal with that?
There's something to be said for discipline, though.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of young people do lack that discipline.
They do.
And like you said, when you get into prison, you will have to follow instructions.
You will follow that regime.
And you will have a routine and you will do what you were told. So it would be so much easier if we could get them to see that they need to do what they're told right outside.
Yeah.
But I think it's the approach to discipline.
Yeah.
And understanding that if they're having a bad day, vocalize it. If it's with your work, with your partner, with your mum, your dad, whoever, your sibling, tell people, because they don't know what's going on inside your head.
No.
And if you become reactive, if you're reacting all the time, the consequences are going to be negative. But if you respond and say, I don't really want to talk right, you're allowed to say that. And some of my participants as well, I just say, if you wake up one morning, as much as I love my job, sometimes you get up and go, oh, I'm tired. As much as I love working with my team, I'm allowed to be tired, sometimes mentally tired, physically tired, or a combination of both. And I say, if you wake up, you've not slept properly, or you've been playing PS5 all night, instead of me driving all the way to Melton, Mowbray or Colville, just drop me a message and say, not today. I'm not going to question you. I'll ring you later on and say, when do you want to meet up next? And it's just about having that open communication. I think the problem with social media is people struggle to communicate. everything's done through WhatsApp and Snapchat on a little video. So their real life interactions they struggle with, and they really lack confidence. And I think that feeds into the dynamic of why people carry knives.
Wow, I love that. You've really unpacked it right there.
Yeah.
The role that social media plays in human interactions, which then eventually leads to criminality.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more? When you mean in terms of social media plays a role in and then what did you say about
into criminality?
Yeah,
so there's a lot of criminal groups that work on things like Telegram, so it's made it more accessible to other people. But I think young people, because of the way that the internet, these companies work, they build a profile on you, and if one of your friends sends you a video of someone getting stabbed or someone getting attacked with a knife, your feed is then bombarded with stuff like that. And then 9 out of 10 kids, maybe even 10 out of 10 kids, decide to carry a knife because they're fearful of the world outside. They don't have the confidence to be able to walk away from the situation. And also, if something happens in a college environment, at school or university, someone records it, you've got 10,000 people putting comments on there, and you're talking to that person's ego. And it's like, whoa, I'm not a dickhead. I'm gonna have to react to this. Everyone else giving you the push as well. So I think it plays into that, and I think also when people don't have certain role models within the kind of environments that they're brought up in, you're looking at these influencers and the life that they live, and the £1,000 jacket and the £1,000 trainers, and then you're looking at people within your estate with the nice cars that they don't know that they're on actually hire purchase cars, or and the stuff that they're wearing that is being brought through criminality. It all feeds into that narrative, quick money. And I think it's, people have lost patience nowadays. You can buy something on Amazon in the morning, sometimes it gets delivered by 7 o'clock. You might get home and the book's come, and everyone is just, they can't be bothered to go in the kitchen and make something. 20 minutes later, there's a bloke knocking on your door from Uber. Everything's fast-paced.
It's fast-paced,
and when they're constantly looking and, comparing their lives, they feel like they're falling behind. I'm not in the right place in my life. And it's like, but you're 17. Your life is not really even began yet. There's so much more to explore out there.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. So in terms of support, what support do you think would have benefited you when you were going through?
When I was going through that, I think someone that could have been a bit relatable, someone that could have sat with me, much like I do with some of the youngsters as well, and spoken to me about some of their own experiences. Because I think sometimes when you're involved in that and some of the experiences you've had, because you don't share that with other people, it's a very lonely place. It's only when you start to you sit in a group dynamic and 10 people at the meditation group talk about anxiety, depression, going, well, actually, it's a bit more common than I thought. And, having somebody to be able to have those conversations with, and someone saying it's all right for you to, anger is an emotion that we all struggle with. But, every single part is one of our key emotions. But it's what you do with that anger and how you react with that anger that's going to dictate how things fall out. So, or fall together. So I think just to have someone that would have been relatable, that understood, maybe from a cultural background as well. And I think that's really important as well. It's not the key dynamic, but I think it is important because when you're trying to talk to somebody, if they don't understand how certain cultures work, people are like, no, don't be silly, everyone does that. It's like, I don't think they do, mate. So it's trying to have that understanding. And I think someone that I could have just spoken to when I'm feeling down, someone that was to give me a little bit of confidence when I lacked confidence and a bit of self-belief in myself, because I didn't believe in myself. And I suppose when I look back on it, I was scared, I was insecure, but I covered that up by being extremely violent. And if you didn't come close to me, I wasn't letting you in, because I was coming from a place where home is supposed to be your safe haven. That's the place you're supposed to be able to go home and feel safe. But if home is a war zone, then you take that war zone out into the world.
That's true. Well, you went through quite a lot. So now that you're walking down a straight and narrow path, you're giving back to your community, what are some of the observations that you've made even amongst parents? Because this picks up on the conversation that we were having in the office, where you were interacting with the young person but also with their parents, and you got to see things through their lens,
through a completely different lens. I think that has been particularly difficult and insightful at the same time for me to witness, because when you're going through it as a young child, if my dad was trying to tell me something, I didn't particularly respect or like my dad. So it was very difficult to take on board what he was saying. And if my mum was saying something, it was just kind of, she's getting on my back. But when I go through the justice system with some of my participants, and I see the impact that it has when they get sent on remand or they get sent to prison, and I see the impact that it has on the families, it really makes me think about my own parents. And it makes me think back to the first time my dad and my mum and my partner came to visit me at HMP Leicester. And it was the quickest 2-hour visit of my life.
Wow.
Like, the 2 hours go so quickly. So how can it be? What do you mean? It couldn't have been 2 hours. What are you talking about? I remember my dad walking off backwards, and he was saying, "Tony, take care of yourself." And his eyes were welling up, and I had to look the other way because it started making me. Because he'd never really shown an emotional side, and all of a sudden now I was seeing somebody that I thought didn't have any emotions look quite distraught. But from his perspective, which I didn't recognise at the time, which I do recognise now as I've got older and through other people's, they're saying, look, when it's your child, you've spent all your life loving and caring the best that you can, because there's no rule book to parenting. You've made some mistakes along the way. They are now in an environment with dangerous people and you can do nothing to protect them. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, whoa.
That's true.
And it's been really, really impactful. And I go away from court and I sit in my car. I'm just sitting there like, I just need a break. I need to just breathe and just work this through, because it's so relatable to the stuff that my own parents, but I didn't see it. I had a completely different lens on. I was angry. I'd only seen one thing, anger. Now I'm seeing it from a place of compassion and love, and you're thinking, wow, this is deep.
Because as flawed as parents are, they're still humans. Love you. They're humans. And those tears tell you that dad loves you. In his broken way, still loves you. And you get to see it in other parents as well, as you go support them with their children. And the thing about childhood and that world of the teenage world is you can only see what's in front of you. You don't see anything else. You don't see other people's pain. You don't see other people's joys. It's all about me.
You're very selfish when you're younger. The whole world just revolves around you.
Exactly.
You're so self-important.
Exactly.
And it's because also when you're young, you're going through different mix of emotions. Like,
you are.
You know, like I think the film Inside Out too really
brilliant.
Explains that so well, in terms of like, even when I was watching, I was like, whoa, like being a human, there's so many emotions that you go through every single day. And then just imagine you're a teenager, you're going through puberty, you're going through
your hormones are changing.
So it's a lot.
There's so many complexities behind growing up, really.
The hormones are changing. You're coming from a young boy to a man, all of those teenage hormones, plus what's happening at home, the emotional impact of that. You're having to navigate. You don't quite have the words to express yourself fully. You don't have the toolbox and the emotional intelligence to be able to navigate certain things. If you don't have the guidance
there,
some people can go down the wrong track. But where there's life, there's still hope.
There is,
exactly.
And you're here today, and we're really glad.
So what advice would you give young people that find crime like interesting, like enticing? What advice would you give to them?
I think the main thing that, in terms of advice that I impart on them, is that lifestyle you live in is way too expensive. The cost of it, the impact of your behaviours and things, that just not on wider society, not just people, on yourself. What you don't realise is when you're a violent person, you don't understand the damage you're doing to yourself. And I've had to do a significant amount of counselling to understand that. And then I didn't realise that I started getting anxiety because I was in a fight or flight. And I didn't when you're in it, you don't realise that. You don't see that. But the way that the psychologist and the counsellor tried to explain it was that your body is like an adrenaline junkie now. So it's trying to find that adrenaline all the time. So it's releasing cortisol into your body but you're living a different life now. There isn't that danger around you, which you didn't really perceive it as danger when you're in it, because it was just, that's the lifestyle you choose to live. This is what we do. And, people get harmed in that lifestyle. People die, and you kind of, in a sad way, you see it as an occupational hazard. You say that's how it works in this world. When you step away from that and you relate to people and say, that's someone's brother, that's someone's partner, someone's dad, it's a really, really heavy burden to carry, and you can dislike yourself a lot, and that will have a real big impact on the relationship you have with other people, because the relationship you have with yourself, how you view yourself, dictates the relationship you have with other people.
Of course.
And if you've got no self-worth, you've got no self-respect, you'll never respect anyone. If you don't love yourself,
Exactly.
you can't give something to someone that you don't possess. It's like me saying to someone, you know what, Jenny, you can borrow my Ferrari on the weekend. I don't have a Ferrari to give you, unfortunately. Not yet.
Yeah.
That day may come.
Soon, yeah.
So it's, and I try to explain it's just way too expensive, and you can always make money, but you can't buy time. And all of the things that you might miss out on, you know, you might be close to a grandma. How old your grandma? Oh, she's 86. Okay, so she's getting on a bit now. Do you have a really look? Yeah, I take her to all of her appointments. Take her down to Age Concern to see her friends. I pick her up. Oh, that's brilliant. That's really good that you've got that relationship. But if you go to prison for the next few years, who's going to look after grandma? How would you feel if you get a letter under the door to say grandma's passed away and you couldn't even say your last goodbyes? Think about that. Is it worth it? And it does start to get them thinking like that. And I can't impart enough on the idea of quick money for them. It's not. It might be quick in the short term, but it's going to cost you in the long term. So I just think it's really key to get them to understand that time is very limited for all of us. Don't count the days, but make the days count.
I love that.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on something you said there, because you said that sometimes reflecting, when you start to connect the dots between the people who may have gotten hurt, and you think that's somebody's brother, that's someone's mum.
Yeah, it's a really heavy burden.
It is. And there's a temptation to live in regret and for self-dislike to creep in.
Absolutely.
But we touched earlier on about the theme on forgiveness. And so forgiveness is something that you give to other people as a gift to yourself. But like you also correctly said, the relationship that you have with yourself will influence the relationship that you have with others.
Absolutely.
And so that forgiveness that you give to other people is one that you must first give to yourself. Before you can give it to others effectively. Because you want always, our young people, yourself, you do what you do based on what you know at that time. Because you don't know any better. But when you know better, we expect better. You know better, you do better. But regret will not undo anything. You know, you can't go back in the past and undo anything. But you can start today to create a much brighter future, which you already have. And that's what you're encouraging other young people to do. But that self-forgiveness, absolutely crucial.
It's massive. It's huge. And honestly, when you carry it, it's just like a really heavy weight around your neck, because you do start to relate to people as people. Which it sounds crazy, but when you're in that world, you don't. It's just you just see that that's another gang member. That's another gang member. They might do something to me, I will do something to them. And if you're fortunate enough, you get an opportunity to get out of that lifestyle, because you see of the impact that it's had on people close to you. You've seen people pass away. You've seen people go to prison for a significant amount of time. And it's just like, actually, I've been given a second chance. And I think everyone deserves a second chance in life.
I completely agree. 100%. So just final question. Some businesses are nervous about hiring people with criminal convictions. What advice would you give to the business community?
To the business community, I'd say I understand your concerns, but I think it's important to recognise that there's a lot of transferable skills. A lot of these people are like little businessmen or business women. You know, they understand supply and demand. They get involved in drugs. There's a lot of creative people out there. And I think by giving them an opportunity, if you believe in them, it helps them, you become part of the solution to the problem. So it's about becoming, you know, if you're not doing anything to help, then you're still part of the problem. And if you're not giving people the opportunities that they need, because if you get someone, it's going to be difficult. I understand if you're selling drugs and you're making £3,000, £4,000 a week, to say go and get a job and you're going to get taxed on it. But slowly like to think that they'd start building a completely different network of people that they meet as well. And they'll start socializing different circles. They'll start going to different gyms, and the mindset will start changing. And the thing that I try to explain to them, it's such a beautiful feeling when you get something with honest money and you buy it and gift it to someone, and you look and you think, you know what, I worked hard for that. And you
don't have to worry. You don't have to look over your shoulder.
You don't have to look over your shoulder. No one's going to The police are not going to kick your door in. Another drugs gang are not going to move into your area and try and kick your head in. You know, and change will be difficult. I use the analogy of the gym. Like if we go gym once and we don't get massive, it doesn't mean the gym didn't work.
No.
Exactly.
But it's all a process, and you need to start believing in people and the power of change, because change is very much possible. But you have to become like the precursor for that change. If you keep stopping these opportunities for people, if you keep looking at it in a negative light, then they'll just have to carry on doing what they're doing, because that's all they know.
It's been an amazing conversation.
Honestly.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Honestly.
Until then, you're most welcome.
A lot to take, honestly. Tony, I'm just here like, oh my gosh, you've shed so much wisdom.
Thank
you. know, so thank you
You're most
for that.
welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.